The Pac-12 still doesn't have a media deal signed, sealed, and delivered, and now rumors are swirling once again that they could be looking at a potential merger with the ACC, if not now, maybe near the end or at the end of this next round of media negotiations. What would that mean to Big 12? Would that be the death knell to the Big 12 Conference? Pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz. Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. So pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let me serve you up this shot of top-shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we are once again focusing on conference realignment and how the Big 12 is impacted. So I got to thinking, with all this talk and all the rumors that are still out there about an ACC and Pac-12 merger, and that potentially still being on the table again, I don't think that's good for the Big 12, and I'm going to explain why. First off, let's look at an article, a recent article, that talks about this issue. This is an article in Forbes, and I'm not going to read you the whole article, but I'll link to it in the description box. Starts out talking about the four corner schools and how they could potentially be targeted by the Big 12 or looking to potentially move to the Big 12 if the Pac-12 can't get a media deal done. And it says the question is, those four schools are far more valuable to the Big 12 than the few $1 million they might get for moving. So why move? Then it goes on to say the answer is there is no reason for any of the Pac-12 members, including the four corner schools, to leave the conference at this point, says Florida-based media consultant Jeff Edwards. What the conference needs is to stay together and quickly ink a new 4 or 5 year media rights deal as we see how the college realignment saga plays out. I think that staying together and using that time to engage the ACC in talks about a future merger or alliance is in the best interest of both conferences. The chance to join the Big 12 will be there 4 years from now, end quote. And that's from Mr. Edwards, the consultant. Then the article goes on to say, last summer, the ACC and Pac-12 had detailed conversations about a partnership involving a championship football game between the two conferences, as well as other basketball and Olympic sports events that could land both leagues a better media rights deal as UCLA and USC left for the Big Ten. At the time, there were too many moving parts to go further, plus the ACC rights deal that pays each school $36 million through 2036 seemed a massive obstacle. It was actually the ACC, and more to the point, the University of North Carolina, that brought up the idea. Andrew Carter of the News and Observer last summer reported that university leadership at North Carolina floated the idea of a super conference between the ACC and Pac-12. And here's a quote from the article. Should we explore a partnership with the Big 12 or Pac-12? UNC Athletic Director Bubba Cunningham texted University Chancellor Kevin Gushewitz. We could have a super conference, both athletically and academically, Gushewitz responded. And now I want to repeat that. We could have a super conference, both athletically and academically, and that's the key to why I think this could be bad for the Big 12, and I'll explain more later, is the academic piece. Probably would need to be called the Atlantic Pacific Athletic Conference, or the APAC. Maybe that's crazy, but if it would get us a better TV deal, it may be worth considering, he continued. And it goes on to say, there remains an open channel between the ACC and the Pac-12 about ways they can work together in the future. Merger talks are not a dream or a media-hyped story. There is clearly room for some serious conversations. The two coastal conferences are a far better fit than joining the Big 12. The name floated by the North Carolina president rebranding of the two leagues as the Atlantic Pacific Athletic Conference makes sense on both an academic and athletic level. An Atlantic Pacific Athletic Conference could offer media partners some outstanding, big-name college sports brands in all four time zones, starting at noon on the East Coast, heading into the Central, Mountain, and ending the night on the Pacific Coast. We are talking Boston College, Pittsburgh, and Syracuse in the East, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Miami, and North Carolina in the South for now, SMU in the Central, Colorado and Utah in the Mountains. Then it is Arizona, Arizona State, Cal, Oregon, Stanford, and Washington out west. Now, this is also obviously assuming that SMU is getting into the Pac-12. And, of course, we even heard rumors last year that SMU was talking to the ACC, so who knows. But it goes on to say in the article, that is a mega conference with the star power and the media markets to land a big media deal. This will take 4 or 5 years to work out, but it would be time well spent if it could be pulled off. Now, when I was reading the article, it mentioned athletically and academically. And a lot of people don't want to talk about the academic piece. I know we all think it needs to be all based on athletics. I get that. But these schools, these universities, and these conferences do have ties academically as well. And the ACC and the Pac-12, along with the Big Ten, are what I consider the three elite academic conferences among the Power Five. SEC is improving, but those three are kind of the elites, and they all take academic, or at least in the past, have taken academics much more seriously than the SEC and the Big 12. So what I did in order to look at the academic piece, I took all three conferences, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the ACC, and I put together a spreadsheet showing how they rank together academically. And I want to share that spreadsheet with you. All right, as you see here on this spreadsheet, I've got the conference academic comparison. When you look at average academic rank, where I took the Wall Street Journal and the U.S. News and World Report average ranking between those two for each school, and then averaged them out over the whole conference. As you can see, the Pac-12 average academic rank is 124, ACC is 78, and Big 12 is 217. Big 12 falls way behind. And as you'll see here in the footnotes, the Pac-12 numbers do not include USC and UCLA. The ACC numbers do include Notre Dame because they're in the conference and everything but football. And then the Big 12 does not include Texas and Oklahoma. Now, when you look at average spent on research, you can see the Pac-12 schools spend about $465 million per year on academic research. ACC schools spend about $394 million a year, whereas Big 12 schools only spend about $156 million a year on academic research. The average acceptance rate for the universities in each of these conferences, the Pac-12 has an average acceptance rate of 63% of students accepted. The ACC accepts about 38% of their students that apply, and then the Big 12, about 69% of students who apply to Big 12 schools are accepted. So the ACC, as you can see, is way far and ahead above the other two in that category. AAU stands for Association of American Universities. It is a designation to schools who get a certain amount of research money every year. I think it's the highest you can get as far as research classifications. The Pac-12, 70% of the Pac-12 schools are AAU members. 33% of the ACC schools are AAU members, and then only 8% of Big 12, which is one out of 12 essentially, which is Kansas. Kansas is the only AAU member institution in the Big 12 conference. And then you look at Carnegie R1 status, which is what I would call the next level down. When you look at research money, 100% of the Pac-12 are Carnegie R1 institutions, all of them. The ACC, 93% are Carnegie R1. The only one that's not is Wake Forest, and we all know Wake Forest is a very elite academic school. They just don't put as much focus on research, but they are highly ranked in every other category, or most other categories anyway. And then when you look at the Big 12, 83% of the schools in the Big 12 are Carnegie R1 institutions. The only two that are not actually are TCU and BYU. As you can see, the Big 12 is in all red. What does that mean? It means they fall way behind these other conferences, the Pac-12 and the ACC, in academic categories for the most part. All of them. And in that article, it said point blank, they want to be with like-minded institutions academically and athletically. Athletically, I think you could put all three of these conferences pretty much side by side and they could compete. But academically, the ACC and the Pac-12 are head and shoulders above the Big 12 when you look at these stats. And that's the kind of numbers that these school presidents are looking at. Now, I'm not saying the Big 12 schools aren't good schools and aren't giving out quality education, because that's not the case. They just have different criteria that they have for their students. They have different missions, different goals, different reasons for being there. For example, West Virginia, they have really low academic rankings because they have a really high acceptance rates, which leads to low graduation rates and so on and so forth, because West Virginia, their primary goal is to educate as many West Virginia citizens as possible. They want to help educate West Virginians. That's a pretty lofty and admirable goal, if you ask me. And in order to do that, they have to allow some students in that probably would not get into other colleges and universities throughout the country. And the state of West Virginia is a poor economic state. Therefore, a lot of the students don't have really high GPAs, and they would not be able to get into schools, a lot of these schools in these other conferences in some cases. That doesn't mean education from West Virginia is not a quality education, because it is. West Virginia has a top-notch medical school, man. They do some great medical research, awesome medical research. I would send anybody in my family to West Virginia University Medical Center. But when it comes to academics and what these school presidents look for when bringing schools into their conferences, most of the Big 12 don't meet the criteria that ACC and Pac-12 presidents would have. It's just that simple, folks. So if the ACC and Pac-12 decide they want to merge, they become the third super conference behind the Big 10 and the SEC. Where does that leave the Big 12? It leaves them out to dry. They have nowhere to go. They're stuck. They become relegated to the bottom tier of the Power 5 and may could potentially even lose their Power 5 status. So Big 12 fans, we have to wish and hope, in my opinion, that this ACC Pac-12 merger does not happen. I don't think it's going to happen now. If it does happen, I think it would be down the road, like I said, closer to that 2030, 2031 date when these new media deals come up for renegotiations and things like that. Because by then, the ACC grant of rights would be worth less. It would be easier to get out of it, and the buyouts will be less and things like that. So it would be a lot easier probably to navigate all of that red tape and all that money as well. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section, Couz's Corner family. All of my bouncers out there, let me know what you think about this topic. Do you think it would be the death knell to the Big 12 if the ACC and Pac-12 decide to merge, or even if they do a scheduling agreement, scheduling alliance? Would that hurt the Big 12 as well? I want to hear your thoughts. To me, a merger would be – I don't know that a scheduling alliance will be the death knell, so to speak, but I do think a full-on merger could be. I want to get your thoughts on it. If you want to if you want to support me here financially, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can check out my merch store. I've got the new Bouncer merch design. I've also got my channel logo design, among a few others. Click one of the photos below or the link at the top of my description box to get into my merch store and check out what I have over there. You can join my channel by hitting the join button right below this video, become a channel member, take advantage of the perks that has to offer. You can hit the heart thanks option right below this video, make a one-time donation along with a comment. If you want to support me absolutely free, you can do that in 4 ways. You can like this video by hitting the thumbs up button right below. You can share this out with your friends. You can drop that comment below that I mentioned earlier. And last but not least, subscribe. Help me get to 5,000 subscribers. It's my next big goal here on the channel, but I need your help to do it. And please get your friends and family to do it as well. With that being said, I really appreciate your support. I appreciate you tuning in to this episode. And until the next one, Q Country Roads. West Virginia, proud to